Hello everyone. Today, I have a story that I absolutely need you to hear. Please, take a seat and pour yourself a strong cup of coffee. My channel is where the magic of storytelling lives. Let us enjoy this incredible tale together. The bitter wind howled mercilessly through the small, isolated settlement in northern Montana. The town felt as if it had been left behind by the passage of time. The roofs of the houses groaned under the heavy weight of snow, and the nearby river reflected the dull, gray winter sky. Eleanor Vance, 72 years old. She was born in this town, watched her husband pass away in this town, and now lived alone, quietly waiting for the end of her time. She sat on her porch, wrapped in an old quilt, sipping hot herbal tea. Beside her sat her only family, a German shepherd named Bella. With her sleek black and tan coat, Bella looked up at Eleanor with intelligent, loyal eyes. At their feet, 3 puppies that Bella had given birth to 2 months ago were wrestling and playing, pressing their small bodies together for warmth. Scout, Daisy, and Bear, those were the simple names Eleanor had given them. Bella, you guys must be cold too. Come on, closer to me. When Eleanor called out with her rasping voice, Bella nudged the puppies with her nose, as if nodding, urging them toward the warmth. This sight was more precious to Eleanor than anything else. Since her husband died, color had faded from her world. But since these dogs arrived, the color had returned. The innocent yapping of the puppies and Bella's warm body slowly melted Eleanor's frozen heart. That evening was supposed to be the same as any other. Just as Eleanor stood up to prepare dinner, a low, rumbling engine noise, unsuitable for such a quiet village, cut through the silence. The sound stopped right in front of Eleanor's house. Suspicious, Eleanor slid the screen door open slightly to peek outside. A dirty white van was idling there. Rust spots covered the body, and it was coated in city dust, giving it an eerie presence in this rural landscape. Bella crouched low in the yard, letting out a deep growl of warning. The puppies, not understanding the danger, hid behind their mother's legs, trembling. In the next instant, the sliding door of the van was thrown open violently. 2 men in work coveralls stormed into the yard with muddy boots. One had glaring eyes that scanned the surroundings, while the other held a large catch pole and net. The moment his eyes locked onto Bella and the puppies, a look of sticky, gross greed appeared on his face. "Hey, this is a jackpot. There are puppies too." The man's dirty voice rang out. Eleanor's heart went cold, as if gripped by ice water. Her body shook. She could not speak. "No, please stop." The voice she finally managed to squeeze out was nothing more than a dry whisper. Bella hid the puppies behind her, baring her fangs and barking furiously. But the men spread the net, mocking her. "Shut up, quiet down, you old hag." It was a split second of struggle. Bella tried to lunge at the man's legs. In that instant, the net thrown by the other man mercilessly covered her body. "Bella!" Amidst Eleanor's desperate scream, the men ruthlessly tightened the wire rope, dragging Bella's body as she was hoisted into the air. Eleanor stumbled off the porch and out into the yard. "Stop! Where are you taking her? Thieves!" Eleanor's scream was drowned out by the roar of the winter wind. The men threw Bella into the back of the van and slammed the door shut. The engine roared again, and tires kicked up gravel. The white van sped away, leaving a cloud of dust. Left behind were the high-pitched cries of the 3 puppies whose mother had been stolen. Their voices turned into screams for help, and soon, they began to chase the van, tumbling over the cold asphalt. The white van sped through the narrow roads of the settlement like a nightmare. The smell of exhaust mixed with the cold evening air. 3 tiny souls were desperately chasing that despairing sight. Scout, Daisy, and Bear, born only 2 months ago. For these puppies, who had lived relying only on their mother's warmth, what was happening was beyond their understanding. They only felt one thing. Their mother, their entire world, was inside that white box, and it was moving away at terrible speed. They yelped, their throats nearly tearing, but their voices were powerless against the heartless engine noise. Scout, the largest of the litter, ran at the front. He pushed his short legs to the limit, kicking the asphalt desperately. Daisy and Bear followed, tumbling after him. There was a dull scraping sound. Daisy, unable to handle the curve, slammed her body into the edge of a drainage ditch. Her small body rolled clumsily on the rough asphalt like a withered leaf. She whined in pain but immediately stood up. The claws on her front paws were torn, and blood began to seep out. But there was no time to feel pain. Her mother's scent was getting further away. Limping, she chased after her brothers again. At that time, Deputy Sheriff Caleb Miller, 24 years old, was slowly driving his patrol cruiser down the mountain road, finishing his shift. Hating the hustle of the city, he had requested to be stationed in this remote village. However, reality was far more boring than he imagined. The incidents were mostly stolen vegetables or raccoons in attics. His young heart, once burning with a sense of justice, was slowly becoming like stagnant water. Today, again, nothing abnormal. He was muttering to himself inside the cruiser when it happened. He saw several small things coming toward him from the curve ahead. At first, he thought they were baby raccoons, but as they got closer, he realized they were 3 puppies, and their behavior was unusual. Caleb slowly pulled the cruiser to the shoulder of the road. The puppies ran as if they did not even see Caleb, looking only straight ahead, crying and screaming. They looked as if they were possessed. When Caleb got out of the car, Scout, who was leading the pack, collapsed at his feet as if his strength had run out. He was covered in mud, wheezing painfully. His eyes were filled with terror and despair. "Hey, what is wrong with you guys?" Just as Caleb crouched down to reach out, Daisy, who was dragging her leg, slipped past him, trying to go further. Ahead of them, not even taillights were visible anymore. Just a dim, empty road. Caleb noticed Daisy's injured paw. There were dots of red blood on the asphalt. It was like a trail showing they had run while whittling away their own lives. His heart pounded violently. This was not just a case of stray dogs. Caleb gently picked up the exhausted Scout. He could feel the small heart beating fast like a storm inside his arms. Caleb wrapped his uniform jacket around the trembling body. He looked up, staring at the road the puppies had been chasing. The mountain road was eerily silent as twilight approached, but Caleb felt he could hear it. The fading engine sound and the scream of an old woman. He bit his lip hard. What kind of tragedy lay ahead of where these small bodies were looking? The heat that he had almost forgotten was beginning to burn again inside him. The mountain substation was filled with the smell of kerosene from the heater and old paper. Deputy Caleb Miller placed the 3 rescued puppies in a cardboard box with a warm towel and was listening to Eleanor Vance, who had rushed in. Eleanor was in shock, her words broken, while wiping tears with trembling hands. She desperately tried to convey the image of the white van, the violent men, and Bella trapped in the net. "Bella is my only family. She is all I have." Her weeping cut deeply into Caleb's chest, gritting his teeth at his own powerlessness. He carefully and sincerely accepted every word, writing it down in the report. At that moment, Sergeant Hank Reynolds, 45 years old, entered the station with a look of annoyance. He had been in charge of this region for years and was bureaucratic in everything he did. "What is going on? It is noisy for this time of night." Hank glanced at the puppies in the cardboard box, then at Eleanor's tearful face, and seemed to understand the situation immediately. However, the words that came out of his mouth were completely different from what Caleb expected. "Oh, another pet theft? I have been hearing about this lately around here. Mrs. Vance, I am sorry, but the chances of finding the dog are low." Caleb looked up involuntarily at that overly businesslike tone. There was not a shred of sympathy in Hank's eyes. It was just a look of trying to process a tragedy as a daily task. Eleanor answered in a thin voice. "She is a German shepherd." "A shepherd? Well, unless she has show papers. The asset value is minimal. It is hard to open a theft case. We will probably process it as property damage. Just file the report." Hank said this while pulling a form from a stack of papers with practiced hands. Caleb could painfully understand how those words slashed Eleanor's heart even deeper. "Asset? Property damage?" Eleanor's lips trembled. To her, Bella was not something with a price tag. She was a precious life with whom she laughed, cried, and slept huddled together on cold nights. Something snapped inside Caleb. Sergeant, that is too harsh. To Mrs. Vance, Bella is not a thing. She is family. Caleb stood up and shouted, surprised by his intensity. Hank frowned. Miller, calm down. I understand how you feel. But we have to look at reality. How much manpower do you think we can spare for one dog? We have bigger cases, you know. Bigger cases? There is a person crying right in front of us because her family was stolen. What bigger case is there? Stop being naive. This is the job. What good is getting emotional? You just follow the rules. Accept the report, and process it by the book. Anything beyond that is above our pay grade. Hank's words were logical. Within the police organization, he might have been right. But Caleb's heart could not accept that correctness. What are rules? What is the pay grade? Are they just excuses to turn away from the injustice right in front of you? Humiliation and uncontrollable anger welled up from the bottom of his stomach. Eleanor's sobbing pierced his back. Caleb looked alternately at the cold face of his senior and the despairing face of the old woman, and clenched his fists tight. There was no way he would let this end with just paperwork. Absolutely not. When consciousness returned, the first things that hit Bella's nose were the smell of rust, urine, and thick fear. In the darkness, she could hardly see. She felt the coldness and hardness of wire mesh against her body. It did not take long to understand she was trapped in a narrow cage. She tried to sit up, but her neck and legs, injured when she was entangled in the net, throbbed with dull, sharp pain. A pathetic whine leaked from her throat. Where is this? Where is Eleanor? And the moment the faces of her puppies flashed in her mind, Bella was struck by anxiety so strong her heart felt like it would burst. Did those small bodies make it home safely? How were they spending the night without their mother? Bella shifted, and the cage made a loud clanking sound. Reacting to that sound, several frightened whines and threatening growls returned from the surrounding darkness. She was not alone. Many other companions were trapped in this despairing darkness just like her. At that moment, the sound of a heavy door opening was heard in the distance, and a beam of light cut through. At the same time, the vulgar laughter of men echoed. Today's haul is excellent. That German shepherd will sell for a high price. Yeah, but it was a waste to leave the puppies behind. We could have gotten a good price for them too. It could not be helped. That old lady was making a scene. It would be trouble if she called the cops and wasted our time. The conversation confirmed these were the men who had violently captured her. Bella bristled her fur, staring into the darkness, growling low in her throat. Anger coursed through her body. But more than that, the men's next words froze her heart. Well, whatever. This one goes to the processing center first thing tomorrow. It is hard to trace anything there. The center, huh? The one where nothing comes out alive. Exactly. The ones that do not find a buyer get disposed of in a batch. Our job ends there. Those guys handle the cleanup. Laughter echoed like demons. Disposed of. Bella understood the meaning instinctively. Death. She would be killed tomorrow. She would never again feel Eleanor's gentle hand on her head, or bury her nose in the warm bodies of her puppies. Despair swallowed Bella like a cold flash flood. Why? Why us? We were just living quietly on that porch. She put her front paws on the wire mesh. The sensation of cold iron. She had to get out. She had to go back to her babies. To Eleanor. She scratched at the wire mesh, not caring that her claws were breaking. Scratch, scratch, but the sturdy cage did not budge. The footsteps of the men faded away, and complete silence and darkness returned. In that, Bella realized, if she stayed here, there would be no tomorrow. She stopped barking. She had to save her energy. She listened intently in the darkness. Smells, air currents, searching for even the slightest possibility of survival. Inside the cold cage, only Bella's amber eyes shone with a strong light that refused to give up. Chapter 2. The Rogue Deputy. In the cold station, Caleb could barely sleep. The sad cries of the puppies huddled in the box stimulated his guilt mercilessly. I will bring her back. Having sworn that, he could not just sit there, waiting for dawn, Caleb started his investigation alone. First, he went to the only security camera installed at the entrance of the village. He requested cooperation from the town hall and checked the footage from the previous evening. Amidst the grainy static, he checked every single car, and his tenacity bore fruit. This is it. The dirty white van matching Eleanor's testimony. He zoomed in and replayed it. Miraculously, the license plate numbers were legible. Caleb immediately returned to the station and ran the plate through the database. The owner information that came up belonged to a shell company out of state that had already gone bankrupt. A typical untraceable car used for crimes. However, the registered address of that company suggested the involvement of an organized crime group. I found you. Caleb trembled with the excitement of finding a clue. With this evidence, headquarters would have to move, he enthusiastically reported to Sergeant Hank and the sheriff. However, Caleb's expectations were shattered before the cold wall of reality. In the sheriff's office, the air was heavy. The sheriff glanced at Caleb's report once and sighed deeply. Deputy Miller, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but drop this case. What? Caleb doubted his ears. Why, we know this much. If we follow this group, we can reach the culprits. The sheriff spoke quietly, as if admonishing a disobedient child, but with a tone that allowed no argument. This group is part of a large-scale theft ring we have been tracking for years. It is not just pet theft. They are involved in drugs and smuggling. A highly dangerous organization. We are currently conducting a massive undercover operation to catch them all in one net. Hank, standing next to him with a bitter expression, interjected. In other words, Miller, if you make a clumsy move and provoke them, the plan we have been preparing for months could be ruined. Then what happens to Bella? What happens to Mrs. Vance? Are you saying we should throw away the tears of one old lady and a dog for the sake of the plan? Caleb's shout echoed emptily in the office. Organizational interests versus individual feelings. Sometimes we have to make ruthless decisions. That is police work. The sheriff looked away from Caleb's eyes. This is an order. Any investigation regarding this case is forbidden. Is that clear? Everything went black. What is justice? Who is the law for? Is crushing a big evil by crushing a small cry right in front of you really the right thing? Caleb bit his lip until he tasted blood. His body felt like it would explode with humiliation and anger. Leaving the office, Hank chased after him down the hallway and tapped his shoulder. I understand how you feel, but if you disobey orders, your career is over. Dishonorable discharge. Are you still going to do it? There was a slight trace of sympathy in Hank's voice, but it did not reach Caleb's heart anymore. Caleb stopped. Outside the window, the cold winter sky spread out. He said quietly, without looking back, but with determination like steel. I do not care if it ends. Hank gasped at those words. Caleb's back showed no hesitation. The words, to serve and protect, written on the police badge were burning in his mind. That night, light snow began to fall silently. The streetlights illuminated the ground turning white. Caleb punched his time card and left the police station as if escaping. Inside him, the orders from above and his own sense of justice were raging like a blizzard. Should he obey as a police officer? Or save a life as a human being? The answer was already there. But thinking about the consequences made his legs heavy as lead. Becoming a police officer was his childhood dream. He might be throwing it away with his own hands. His feet unconsciously headed toward Eleanor Vance's house. Warm orange light leaked from the windows of the old wooden house. When Caleb knocked, a haggard Eleanor appeared. Oh, Deputy Miller, is there any news? There was a pleading tone in her voice. Caleb could not possibly tell her that the investigation order had been cancelled. No, I just came to check on things. The puppies won't eat anything. They seem to be waiting for their mother. Invited inside, Caleb saw the 3 puppies in the corner, huddled together in the box. Shivering slightly, they only sniffed at the milk Caleb offered but would not drink. Their small eyes just stared at the front door. They believed their mother would come back any moment. That innocent sight tightened Caleb's chest. Suddenly, a memory from a distant day returned to Caleb. When he was in elementary school, he also had a dog, a white mongrel named Shiro. One day, Shiro got sick. His poor parents could not afford the expensive treatment, and he could only watch. Caleb held Shiro's paw as he grew weaker day by day, continuing to lie. "It's okay. You will get better." And Shiro turned cold in Caleb's arms. The helplessness of being able to do nothing. The regret of not protecting what he swore to protect. That memory still remained as a deep scar in his heart. The puppies in front of him overlapped with Shiro from that day. And his standing there doing nothing overlapped with his helpless childhood self. "I will never regret again." Caleb clenched his fist hard. He felt the hard texture of his badge in his chest pocket. It was his pride, the symbol of his dream. But if he had to abandon these small lives, he did not need it. He slowly knelt in front of the puppies. And as if speaking to them, he said quietly but powerfully, "It is okay. I will bring your mom back. Absolutely." This was not a lie for comfort like he told Shiro. It was a firm oath staking his everything. When he looked up, Eleanor was looking at him with tears in her eyes. Caleb turned to Eleanor and bowed deeply. "Mrs. Vance, I promise, I will bring Bella back, even if it costs me my entire career." Snow piled up silently, as if hinting at the lonely battle about to begin. It covered the world in white silence. Caleb called the station to call in sick, then locked himself in his cheap apartment. The curtains were drawn, and only the computer monitor illuminated his face in pale blue. From here on, he was not Deputy Caleb Miller. He was crossing the line into the darkness as just one man. His lonely investigation began in the darkness of the internet, seeking information never found in the surface world. Caleb used a highly anonymous browser to infiltrate dark forums where criminals gathered. The screen was lined with words he wanted to cover his eyes from. Buying high, no pedigree papers needed, untraceable roots. It was a world of swirling desire where pets were treated not as lives, but as mere products. Holding back nausea, Caleb combined keywords: the digital footprints left by the theft ring, the stolen van's number, the shell company's name, and slang they might use. He roamed the sea of information for hours. His eyes were bloodshot, his body heavy as lead, but that oath in the snow drove him. And late on the third night of the investigation, he finally reached a promising post. Reddish-black German Shepherd mix. Female. Disposal requested. Details in DM. The posting time was early morning the day after Bella was stolen. The characteristics matched perfectly. Caleb's heart beat violently. He immediately created an account with a disposable email address and attempted to contact the poster. Broker. Pretending to be one. Choosing words carefully, he sent a message. "Interested in that unit? Show me a photo." Minutes later, a reply came. Seeing the attached photo, Caleb gasped. A dog huddled in the dim light. The coat and build looked like Bella, but the face was dirty and emaciated, making it hard to tell. But the light in those eyes told Caleb's intuition it was her. No mistake, it is Bella. Caleb immediately proposed a deal. "We'll pay cash upon confirmation. Designate location." The reply was short and ominous. 2 a.m. Old Industrial District. Warehouse 3. Come alone. Try anything funny, and the dog dies. The smell of a trap was strong. Going alone, unarmed, without a badge, into the heart of a dangerous criminal group. Fear gripped his heart with cold hands. But there was no hesitation. The despairing eyes in the photo would not leave his mind. Eleanor's tears, the puppies, the regret for his own dog. They burned away his fear. Caleb closed his laptop and stood up quietly. From the back of his closet, he took out a black hoodie he used to wear in college and worn-out jeans. The face in the mirror was not the usual honest police officer, but the face of a man resolved to challenge the shadows. The designated location was in a jurisdiction he did not know. He could not call for backup. An infiltration investigation, all alone, was about to begin. The abandoned industrial district at midnight was silent as a giant graveyard. Rusted steel beams cast eerie silhouettes, and broken windows reflected the moonlight dully like the eye sockets of a skull. Caleb Miller cut the engine and hid in the darkness. At the promised time, 2 a.m., the shutter of Warehouse 3 groaned and lifted slightly. Dim light leaked out, stretching across the ground. Caleb pulled his hood deep to hide his face and got out of the car. His heart beat loud enough for him to hear. Step by step, He approached the warehouse. Ducking under the shutter, the smell of mold and oil filled the air. A single naked bulb hung down, dimly illuminating the area. Inside the warehouse were two men. Both had nasty looks and muscular builds. Seeing Caleb, they showered him with appraising stares. "You the one who contacted us?" one man asked in a gravelly voice. Caleb squeezed his voice from his gut so it wouldn't crack. "Yeah, where is the merchandise?" "Don't rush. First, follow our rules." The men roughly patted Caleb down, checking for weapons, wires, or trackers. Caleb did not resist. If he made a wrong move here, it was over. Finishing the body search, one man signaled to the darkness in the back. The other man dragged a cage out. Caleb held his breath and stared at the cage. Is Bella inside? However, under the light of the bulb, it was not Bella. It was a frightened, strange mutt. The blood drained from Caleb's body instantly. Was he tricked? Was this a completely different deal? Or a trap to lure him out? His head was in chaos. But he could not show agitation here. Caleb suppressed his emotions and spoke coldly. "This is different from what we discussed. I am looking for a shepherd." The man sneered. "Huh? I don't know about that. This is the only one here today. If you don't want it, get lost." A desperate situation. Does the trail end here? Caleb bit his lip and turned to leave. That was when the man who brought the cage whispered to his partner in an annoyed tone that caught Caleb's ear. "Shit, what a pain. Why do we have to help with this other dog deal? We should have just taken that German shepherd to the mountain hideout already." He did not miss those words. Mountain hideout. Electricity ran through Caleb's body. This was it. This word was the next signpost. He feigned calmness and turned his back on the men. "Right, forget this conversation then." Ducking under the shutter, he went back out into the darkness. Behind him, he heard the men laughing. Caleb ignored it and hurried to his car. As soon as he got in, he exhaled loudly in relief and excitement. He avoided the worst-case scenario. And more importantly, he got a huge clue. Mountain hideout. The problem was, where in the mountains? There were countless mountains in the state. Searching blindly would be impossible. Caleb glared at the GPS map. The location of those men. And this warehouse. Deducing from there, he thought of one possibility. Not far from this factory, there was a vast mountainous area straddling the state line. There used to be poultry farms and ranches there, but now many were abandoned ruins. If there was a hideout, that had to be it. Caleb started the engine without hesitation. Cutting through the darkness, his car began to run toward the border mountains where a sliver of hope waited. Chapter 3. The Raid. As the pre-dawn sky turned deep indigo, Caleb's car entered the rough logging road leading to the border mountains. The road on the GPS had ended long ago, and now he was proceeding relying only on his intuition and the sound of tires crunching gravel. The abandoned poultry farm. Betting on that possibility, Caleb had been driving on unmarked side roads for hours. Impatience and fatigue eroded his thoughts. Is it really ahead? What if he was wrong? Doubt began to appear. That was when he saw something unnatural on the road ahead. Stopping the car and illuminating it with a flashlight. It was a cheap dog collar. And near it, fresh tire tracks remained clearly. Caleb jumped out of the car and examined the tracks. They matched the tire pattern of the theft rings van he saw at the factory. No mistake, it is ahead. His heart began to pound violently again. Caleb hid his car in the brush off the logging road, cut the engine, and decided to proceed on foot. He could not let them hear him. The cold morning air stabbed his lungs. Not a single bird sang in the eerie silence. Caleb held his breath and advanced carefully. After walking for about 5 minutes, a dilapidated building appeared through the gaps in the trees. A huge chicken coop lay like the corpse of a beast. It was definitely the abandoned farm. And beside the building sat that familiar dirty white van. Bingo! He finally found the hideout. Suppressing his elation, Caleb approached more carefully and hid in a bush. He observed the co-op. Windows were boarded up, but there was one spot where a ventilation grate was loose. And from inside, he could hear the voices of multiple men and the faint cries of dogs. Caleb took out his binoculars. No lookouts, but occasionally a man would come out to smoke. On his waist, something glinted dully. A knife? Or a gun? Caleb realized the worst-case scenario. One man came out, then another, until he confirmed at least 5 men coming and going. Too many. It was reckless to fight alone. He should call for backup. If he called HQ, SWAT might move, but then his disobedience would be exposed. His career would surely end. For a moment, hesitation arose in Caleb's heart. But shattering that hesitation, a particularly loud and desperate cry echoed from inside the co-op. Yelp. Unmistakably Bella's voice, and that voice was steeped in pain and terror. They were doing something terrible to her. Caleb felt his blood run backwards. There was no time to wait for backup. Even now, Bella's life was in danger. If he was too late, Eleanor's face and the puppies crossed his mind. There was only one choice. Caleb put down the binoculars and gripped the collapsible baton he had brought for self-defense. The cold metal sensation solidified his resolve. No matter what happened to him, he could not choose to do nothing after hearing that voice. Caleb took a deep breath. The loose ventilation grate, that was the only entry point. He waited quietly like a beast for the timing to jump from the bush. The fire of a lonely battle was about to be lit. The man on watch yawned and went back inside. The chance was now. Caleb Miller held his breath and burst from the bush like a bullet. Killing his footsteps, he sprinted to the wall of the co-op. His heart hammered against his ribs. Sticking to the wall, he listened. Vulgar laughter. Bella's pained cry was gone now. That conversely fueled Caleb's agitation. He put his hands on the removed grate and peered inside. Inside was a hell beyond imagination. Cages were piled messily, and inside, thin dogs crouched weakly, and in the center of the room, men surrounded Bella. Bella was tied with ropes. Unable to move, one man was threatening her with an iron pipe. This one has guts, but that ends today. The moment the man raised the pipe. Stop. Feeling his reason blow away, Caleb jumped down through the vent, startled by the sudden intruder. The men froze for a second. Caleb did not miss that gap. Carrying the momentum of his landing, he kicked the nearest man in the solar plexus. Oof. The man groaned and fell. But there were still 4 enemies. Who the hell are you? Regaining their senses, the men attacked Caleb all at once. Caleb drew his baton and barely blocked a swinging iron pipe. Clang! A jarring metallic sound rang out, and shock ran through his arm. Outnumbered, Caleb had learned some judo in the academy. But these were criminals who had survived rough lives. He threw one, but another punched him from behind immediately. Caleb resisted desperately, punched, kicked, yet gritting his teeth and fighting back. He had to save Bella and all the dogs here. That single thought supported him. However, his physical limit came too fast. Swept off his feet by a man circling behind, Caleb lost balance and fell to the floor. Merciless kicks rained down on his stomach and back. Pain like his insides were being stirred. He could not breathe. His vision flickered with sparks. One man grabbed Caleb's hair and pulled his face up. Seeing Caleb, the man smirked filthily. I thought I saw this face somewhere. Hey, this is a cop, the rookie from the local station. At those words, the eyes of the other men changed. Not just an intruder, a cop trying to expose them. Bad news. Kill him. If we erase him here, nobody will know. Murderous intent. The man with the iron pipe walked slowly toward Caleb. The tip glinted in the moonlight. Caleb prepared for death in his fading consciousness. Is this it? I could not protect anything in the end. Mrs. Vance, I am sorry. The man raised the pipe high. Caleb closed his eyes against the approaching despair. A dull sound of meat being struck, and his vision went completely black. The last thing he heard was a ruthless shout to kill him. Consciousness sank into a dark, cold swamp. He no longer felt pain. Just deep helplessness and regret weighing on his body like lead. Am I dying here? But at the edge of that darkness, Caleb's ear caught a sound. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The sound of metal grinding violently against metal, and mixed in was a low beastly growl. Grr. Summoning his last remaining strength, Caleb opened his eyes slightly. A scene beyond belief spread out before him. Bella, she should have been tied up. Somehow, she stood up, and she was biting furiously at the iron bars of the cage she had been shoved into. Her eyes were bloodshot, bloody saliva dripped from her mouth, and her bared fangs scattered sparks as she gnawed the sturdy iron. It was no longer a dog. It was a mother turned demon to protect her own. The men flinched at Bella's terrifying appearance. What is with this thing? Has it gone mad? Hey, shut it up. One man approached Bella with the pipe again. But Bella turned all the killing intent she had for Caleb toward that man. Roar. A roar of intimidation echoing from the depths of hell. It was not just a bark. It was the scream of a soul willing to burn its own life to devour the enemy. That voice shook Caleb's sinking consciousness violently. That is right. What am I doing? This dog, with her wounded body, is trying to protect me. I swore I would protect her. Bella's scream lit a fire in Caleb's heart. Not yet. It is not over. Caleb gripped a handful of sand from the floor. He forced power into his numb arm. His muscles screamed. With a roar, Caleb sprang up. He tackled the nearest man's legs without caring for appearance. Caught off guard, the man fell hard. His flashlight rolled across the floor, stopping at Caleb's feet. Caleb grabbed it and, without hesitation, threw it at the face of the man behind him. Smack! A scream. At that moment, a miracle happened. The hinge of the cage door Bella had been biting finally gave way and broke with a loud snap. Free! Bella lunged without a second of hesitation at the arm of the man swinging the pipe at Caleb. Arg! The man's scream echoed in the co-op. Bella had risked her life to open a path. Caleb stood up, wobbling, using the last of his strength. He was not just being protected anymore. This time, it was his turn to protect. He picked up the fallen iron pipe and faced the remaining men. In his eyes, the color of despair was gone, replaced by a burning flame resonating with Bella's soul. Inside the co-op was chaos. The screams of bitten men, angry shouts, and Bella's fierce growls mixed together. Caleb stood tall, protecting Bella behind him. Move, you damn dog. One man tried to kick Bella. Caleb would not allow it. He swung the pipe at the man's ribs. A dull impact, and the man retreated in agony. But Caleb's body was at its limit. His head throbbed. His vision swayed. Standing was a struggle. This was bad. At this rate, they would lose. The men were closing the distance again. Just as despair threatened to cover Caleb's heart again. Woo woo woo. From the distance, but surely getting closer. That sound. Sirens. Not just Caleb, but the men noticed it too. Everyone stopped. What? Why are the cops here? While the men panicked, the siren sounds multiplied, eventually surrounding the ruin completely. In the next instant, the entrance was kicked open violently, and armed officers stormed in with blinding flashlights. Police, nobody move, drop your weapons and get on the ground. An authoritative voice through a megaphone. It was a voice Caleb knew well. Leading the charge in helmet and vest was Sergeant Hank Reynolds. His face was not the usual bored expression, but one of intense seriousness. The gang members stood dumbfounded, then threw down their weapons and raised their hands. Burly tactical officers pinned them to the ground one by one. It was over in seconds. Caleb dropped the iron pipe and collapsed where he stood. All strength left him. Hank rushed over. Miller, you idiot, being so reckless. His voice sounded angry but also relieved. Why are you here? Caleb asked in a faint voice. Hank took off his helmet and scratched his head, looking embarrassed. You called in sick. I had a bad feeling. I tracked your phone GPS. I bowed my head to the sheriff and took full responsibility. Hank had anticipated Caleb going rogue, and he, too, was torn between duty and humanity. He could not abandon Caleb's raw sense of justice. I am sorry. Save the apology. Good work. Hank patted Caleb's shoulder firmly. Caleb's gaze turned to Bella, who was crouching quietly in the chaos. She watched silently as the criminals were cuffed. Caleb dragged his painful body to her. Bella, thank you. It is because of you. When he reached out, Bella rubbed her nose weakly against his hand. Her body was terribly hot and shivering. And Caleb noticed. Dark blood was flowing from Bella's side. She had been stabbed during the brawl. "Bella, stay with me," Caleb called out, but Bella whined weakly. The light was fading rapidly from her eyes. "Medic, get a stretcher here, now." Hank's roar echoed. The scene was secured, but the real battle was just beginning. Caleb hugged Bella's body, soaked in blood, and could only keep calling her name. "Bella, don't die. Open your eyes, Bella." Her breathing was shallow and fast. Warm blood seeped through Caleb's fingers as he pressed the wound. That warmth cruelly told him her life was slipping away. Emergency responders rushed in, and Bella was carefully placed on a stretcher. But a human ambulance cannot take a dog. "What do we do? She will bleed out," Caleb shouted in despair. That was when Hank yelled at a nearby officer. "Find the nearest vet hospital. I will take her in my squad car. Clear the road." It was an unprecedented decision. Using a police vehicle for a dog. A massive violation, but Hank did not hesitate. Bella was loaded into the backseat. Caleb jumped in with her. "Please, make it in time." Hank floored the gas pedal. The red lights spun wildly, and the sirens screamed through the night mountain road. In the backseat, Caleb held Bella, applying pressure and praying. "Don't die. Your family is waiting. Eleanor is waiting. The puppies are waiting." Bella's eyes stared into space. Caleb did not know if she could hear him. Occasionally her body would jump in a small spasm. It felt like an eternity before the squad car flew into town and screeched to a halt in front of a veterinary hospital. "Doctor, emergency, stab wound, massive blood loss." The vet and nurses rushed out. Bella was taken straight to surgery. The doors swung shut. Caleb and Hank sat on the hard chairs in the waiting room, staring at the door in silence. Caleb's uniform was stained dark red with Bella's blood. Time passed like torture. Eventually, the surgery light went off, and the exhausted vet came out. Caleb jumped up. "Doctor, Bella, did she make it?" The vet shook his head slowly. "We gave her blood, but the loss was severe, plus internal damage from the beating. We did our best, but..." The vet chose his words carefully. "She is in critical condition. Tonight is the peak. She might not make it." Strength left Caleb's body. Next to him, Hank punched the wall in frustration. At that moment, a panicked voice came from the surgery room, followed by a flat electronic sound. Beep. The alarm signaling cardiac arrest. The vet rushed back in. Through the glass. Frantic movement. CPR. Defibrillator. Caleb pressed his forehead against the glass, watching the flickering flame of life. "God, please, please do not take her." The alarm echoed in his despairing heart. 3 days passed since that night. While undergoing disciplinary hearings, Caleb spent every free moment at the vet. Bella had miraculously survived. After the vet's desperate efforts, her heart started beating again. However, she remained unconscious in the ICU, connected to many tubes. Caleb apologized to her in his heart over and over. "If only I had been faster." On the morning of the 4th day, Caleb's phone rang. It was the hospital. "Deputy Miller." Bella woke up. Hearing those words, Caleb forgot where he was and ran. When he arrived at the ICU, Eleanor Vance was already there. She was bent over the glass case, weeping silently. Caleb stood next to her. On the other side of the glass, Bella looked at them with groggy eyes. Her body could not move yet, but the light of consciousness was definitely back. "Bella," Eleanor called out in a raspy voice. Bella reacted faintly. Her ears twitched, and the tip of her tail waged just a little. It was a tiny movement, but to everyone there, it was the loudest proof of life. Tears overflowed from Caleb's eyes. Thank goodness. That afternoon, Bella was moved to a general cage. Eleanor was allowed to touch her. She stroked Bella's head with trembling hands. Bella narrowed her eyes, remembering the touch, and she licked Eleanor's hand weakly, but surely. Eleanor broke down crying, not tears of despair, but tears of gratitude and joy. Caleb watched from a distance. What he did might not be forgiven as a police officer. He disobeyed orders. He would be punished, but he had no regrets. Seeing the bond restored, The old woman's tears, and the dog's warmth. He knew he wasn't wrong. Days later, the official committee notice arrived. It was lighter than expected. A reprimand and 3 months of administrative leave for retraining. Hank had pulled strings behind the scenes. And public opinion, praising Caleb as a hero after the news broke, helped. Bella's life was saved. Her recovery would take time. And the paralysis in her hind legs might be permanent. But no one was in despair. They saw the light at the end of the tunnel. Chapter 4. Spring in Montana. The harsh winter ended, and a late spring finally arrived in the northern mountains. Horsetails sprouted from the thawing ground, and plum blossoms painted the air pink. Eleanor's porch was bathed in soft sunlight. She was sipping her tea. Beside her sat Bella, looking peaceful. 3 months since that day. Bella's hind legs still had some paralysis. Her walk was awkward, but that did not cloud her happiness. In the yard, Scout, Daisy, and Bear, now much bigger, were running around energetically. They would run to their mother, nuzzling her, and Bella would look at them with eyes full of love, grooming their fur. A scene of ordinary life that was brutally torn apart, now shining like a jewel because it was almost lost. A motorcycle stopped in front of the house. Taking off his helmet, revealing a tan and a sharper look, was Caleb Miller. He had finished his retraining and returned to the village. "Hi, Mrs. Vance. Hey Bella, doing good?" Bella recognized him and wagged her tail happily. She stood up slowly on her bad legs and walked toward him. Caleb knelt and petted her head gently. Bella pressed her head against his hand and licked his cheek to say thank you. "You look much better." "Yes. It is all thanks to you risking your life. Deputy, I will never forget this." Eleanor bowed deeply. Caleb waved his hands. "Please, don't. I just did what was normal. Or rather, I just did what I wanted to do." Caleb smiled. The hesitation from the winter was gone from his face. The young man who wavered between rules and justice had found his own form of justice. It wasn't just about judging big evils. It was about having the courage to reach out to the small cries in front of you, even if you lose everything. Caleb enjoyed the spring sun with them for a while. Then, it was time to patrol. As he got on his bike, Bella came to the gate to see him off. Caleb looked back one last time. Bella looked up at him quietly. Her amber eyes were as clear as the spring sky, and seemed to say clearly, "Thank you." Caleb nodded strongly and put on his helmet. The spring wind stroked his cheek. He loved this village and the precious family living in it. The engine sound of the motorcycle was sucked into the blue sky. It sounded like a fanfare announcing a new hope and a certain future. 164.4s